real success stories told by the people who lived them.
We're going to have some guests on this show that everybody knows, and we're going to have guests on this show that nobody knows yet.
One by one, Nick Hyder is adding hits to the Hitstreak.
Blessings, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Hitstreak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder. And folks, I got an extra special treat for you joining me in the Hit Lab today. Check it out, folks. He's the founder of Rob Luna Wealth Academy, the CEO of Real Talk Holdings, and he's a brand new author, folks. His book is called Close Your Wealth Gap, Financial Lessons to Upgrade Your Life, and it's published by the rock stars at Wiley. Folks, I got the man himself, Rob Luna, joining me today. Rob, it's so great to have you, man.
What's up, Nick, man? I'm excited to be here and share some knowledge, information, hopefully with your audience.
Brother, it's going to be, I'm so fired up about this one. I hope I can contain myself.
Well, I told you, man, I want this to be one of the most watched, viewed, listened podcasts ever. So we're going to give people some really good information, especially if they stay towards the latter part of this podcast. I got some secrets for people I'm going to be sharing.
That's what I'm talking about. So, Rob, this is your first book, comes out literally next week. Yeah. And the title's strong, Close Your Wealth Gap, Financial Lessons to Upgrade Your Life. So first of all, what's the premise of the book? Why does everybody need to have it? And more importantly, I'm just curious, like, how'd they finally get you to do it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I said forever, Nick, like, I don't want to write a book. It's not something I want to do. Now that I've done it, I'll say I kind of understand why I didn't want to do it. It's a lot. It's a ton of work. But, I was talking to you before. Growing up, in college, I quoted Wiley so many times on these term papers. And so when they called me one day and said, Rob, we want you to write a book for us, I don't know. I just felt like it was something that I needed to do at the time. And, so they said, initially, Nick, what they said is, we hear you talking about this wealth gap in America. My view on that is it's not going to be solved with government handouts. It's more of the give a man a fish versus teaching a man to fish. And so what I want to do is teach people how to close their wealth gap through financial literacy and entrepreneurism. And so when they came to me about writing a book, they wanted to be called Close the Wealth Gap. I said, look, that sounds interesting, but at the end of the day, most people are so worried about their own situation. Yeah, they hear it, they listen to it, but they want to know, how do they close their own wealth gap? So I took that concept of, how are the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer, and brought that to the individual so that they could do that for their own life. And that's kind of the premise of the book, is actionable lessons to go from where they're at today to where they want to be in life.
Well, man, it was startling to me in the first time. This was like not that long ago. I'm talking like maybe 2017. When I was getting into reading, finally got into, like, I was the athlete that didn't like to read books. Like, every book I ever read, I was made to read. But I started listening to them, especially when I would cut my yard. And Rich Dad, Poor Dad changed my life, because it was when I realized I was able to admit to myself, I don't know anything about money.
Right. Yeah, I mean, financial literacy is a huge problem. And, the challenge is, like, I've got my daughter in one of the best private schools in Arizona right now. She's like, Dad, she came, this month and spent some time, did my Wealth Academy call with me. She's like, they're not talking about any of this stuff. And, she has a Roth IRA. She's investing in stocks. She's doing all this stuff. But she's like, they're not teaching this at school, Dad. And, the problem with that is, we all hear, look, if I only knew then what I knew now, right? And I think financial literacy is one of those things where we all know about the compounding effect, but a lot of times we don't find out what we need to do until we're 40, 50, 55 years old. And then the amount of money we need to save, the things that we need to do are so overwhelming. So what do? We do nothing. And that's why if you look at the average American, 56% of people can't meet an emergency from their savings that's $1,000 or greater.
Oh my gosh.
People are retiring absolutely broke. And so what I'm trying to do is, instead of saying, if I only knew then, is giving people that information today so they could start taking actionable advice.
Man, I want to make sure you've done a lot in the world. You've been an on-air contributor for Fox Business. Like, everybody's probably hearing your voice and seeing you right now and be like, I know that guy. I know that guy. Where else would they have seen you, Rob?
Yeah, CNBC, Bloomberg, Fox Business, I'm on every week. I'm now starting to do Newsmax. Those guys started calling me up.
That's awesome.
So they're coming up pretty big now. So yeah, those are the things that I'm doing right now.
Killer. That is killer, man. What's a big deal to have you here, baby. It's
Thanks,
a big
man.
deal.
Excited to be here.
Let's get back to the financial literacy, because my dad, who I do, he runs a nonprofit that I help him with. Mm-hmm. And about 4 or 5 years ago, the coaches are staying the same age. He's just getting a little bit older, and of these baseball teams that come to our nonprofit to play in our events. And he's like, Nick, they didn't know how to write a check. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I was like, well, why would they? Yeah, Yeah. And but he was like, yeah, but they did know how to write a check. Mm-hmm. And it's like, what else don't they know? Mm-hmm. And I've told the story before. From 2007 to 2011, me and a few buddies owned and operated 6 different nightclubs and restaurants, and we did hella revenue. I never had any money. Mm-hmm. We didn't know how to pay ourselves. Mm-hmm. I didn't know. Mm-hmm. I didn't know anything. I didn't know all the different types of income, and I didn't understand the importance of cash flow and good debt versus bad debt and all those things. First of all, start with your book that's coming out, right? Yeah. And then what would be some of your advice as they're reading the book? What's some stuff to look for? How do they apply the knowledge you're giving them into their life?
Yeah, and I think that's the most important part is the application. Mm-hmm. Like so many of us read books, we watch, YouTube, whatever it is, and then at the end of that, we go back and we do the same thing that we were doing before. And, a lot of people have come to me over the last several years, what book should I read? What are the things that I should listen to? And the challenge is, quite honestly, for me, it wasn't one book or 2 books. I dedicated my whole life to financial literacy. So it's a lot of things. So what I tried to do in this book, Nick, was give people the core foundation of a little bit of everything to what they need to do. So some of the things that you talked about, how do you manage your own personal balance sheet? How do you grow the top line, manage the bottom line? What are some of the investments you should be making at an early age? What is the debt that is okay to have? I know there's guys out there who I think is a tremendous person to listen to, Dave Ramsey. But the problem with Dave Ramsey is that's for a very specific audience.
Yes.
I like what he does. And I think for certain people, it's okay. But, a lot of people don't want to live in a $250,000 house and, kind of live beneath their means for the rest of their life. Some people are aspiring to do more. Right. Like myself, I grew up super poor. No one in my family ever owned a home. We weren't traveling. We weren't doing any of those things. But I aspired to do those things. And what I learned is there is a roadmap to be able to do that. So I think no debt, it's a little bit more complex than that. And so what I try to do is keep things simple and accessible, but I want to show people what is that debt to take? What are the things that you can do early? But I'll tell you this, Nick, and I'll kind of, fast forward through the book. At the end of the day, you're not going to, $4 a cup of Starbucks save your way to wealth. You have to be able to grow your income. And so I talk a lot about what are those things you can do from a side hustle to becoming an entrepreneur. But to your point, and at my wealth management firm, about 20% of my clients were former professional athletes or current professional athletes. You have to be able to show them a way to where when they start building, whether it's through sales of being a real estate agent or an entrepreneur, when you start making that money, how do you invest that in a way to where you build a portfolio that eventually is going to build that passive income to replace that? And I think at the end of the day, what we're all investing for, if you haven't thought about it, you should now, is freedom, the ability to do what you want, when you want to do it, not because you have to do it. I call it in the book work optional, primarily because I work with athletes. They weren't retiring. They just wanted to do the things that they wanted to do. They wanted to go to dinner with people they wanted. They wanted to attend events they wanted to do. They wanted to show up and do jobs that they wanted to do, not that they had to do. Yes. And the vast majority of Americans are showing up doing things because they have to do them, not because they want to do them.
Let's go. That's what I'm talking about, baby. Brad told me one time, a mutual friend of ours, he was like, we were talking about Vegas and Nashville, and he was like, bro, life starts at $20,000 a month.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, $20,000 a month. You can make decisions for your family without counting the money first.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was asking my dad, I grew up in a self-employed house, happy household. Mm-hmm. And there were ups and downs, as it is in any business owner's journey. I asked him, I was like, when did you know you made it? He goes, it was when your mom and I could take you guys out to eat and we didn't have to balance the checkbook. You know what I mean? And for my family, $20,000 a month is we can make decisions about he needs to be in this school.
Right.
You know, we could actually give our kids what they need and what's best for them without saying, well, what can we afford that's best for them? That sucks.
Right. Yeah, it does suck. And I think at the end of the day, like I was saying, money is about choice. And I've never met anybody in life that says, I want less choice. Yeah. Right. So it comes down to just like you said, and I was saying, I've got my daughter in the school that's not inexpensive, but it's the school I want her to be. And money has allowed me to put her in that school. So it's given me choice of education. God forbid something happens to you and you go to the doctor and you're not in the healthiest situation. Do you want to send your kids or yourself to the second or third best doctor? Or do you want to be able to go to the best doctor out there? We all know the number one cause of divorce is financial stress. So look, you could say money doesn't matter, but that's BS. Money is going to give you choice, power, impact. You have to find a way to put yourself in a position where you have more than what you're spending. And if you can't do that, you're going to live a second-class life.
Man, so good. Growing up in the middle class, you're around a lot of people that almost villainize money. They almost villainize people that have lots of money. What do you think causes that? You didn't know I was going to ask you that question. It's something that I even had that ingrained in me to a degree.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a problem too, is because I think first of all, it's mindset. It's right. It's how we grow up, the people that we're around, which is our family, what they're telling us we can and can't do. That's for those people, not us. And that's, one of the challenges, I think, for those people out there who are raising children. Do not put limits on them. Don't tell them the things that they can't do. Show them the way to do the things that they want to do. And if you do that, you're going to open up their mind and opportunities to live a life that hopefully, and I think for most parents, you have kids, I have a daughter. I want her to be able to live a life way better than what I'm living right now. But if they've got a broken, limited mindset, that's never going to be able to happen. And so I think for those people, Nick, and look, I grew up super poor also. And I was one of those people who, when you heard hey, they're going to tax the rich, and rich to me, anyone's making 100,000 or more, they were rich. And of course, go ahead and tax those people, until I really started to understand and learn, well, hey, you in this country have the opportunity to go out there and actually make money. If you bust your ass and you don't go to sleep at 5 o'clock at night, you're not sitting on the couch playing Nintendo, you're getting out there and making things happen. And when you do that, do you want someone coming and taking half that away? Yeah. So, the thing about capitalism, if you get people and put them into that opportunity, it changes mindsets. And that's what, I try to do, is show people, look, hey, you might be here now, but if you want to get there in this country still, and what I fight for every day, there still is a path, but you need, first of all, the mindset, secondarily, the roadmap, and then you need the conviction and you need the work ethic to be able to go ahead and take it to the next level.
There was a movie, I can't remember the title of it, that starred Mark Wahlberg, but in one of the opening scenes of the movie, he's this fired up guy, and doing all that stuff. And he says, what makes the United States the greatest country on earth is if you know what you want and you're willing to do whatever it takes to get it, you can have it.
Yep. Yeah. I believe that, Nick. And so a lot of people, see some of the, hey, he's on Newsmax, he's on Fox, he's, this conservative Republican. What I am is I'm just pro-American. And at the end of the day, I'm really not that, when you get to know me, that political of a person. But what I fight for is what I just said, is the ability to either be born in this country, come to this country, and live the American dream. And the American dream is entrepreneurism. The American dream is to be able to come from nothing. This isn't India. It's not a caste system. If you're born poor, you don't have to stay poor. But as soon as we start villainizing, like you said, success, as soon as we start putting up barriers, we start putting up, restrictions for entrepreneurs, as soon as we start incentivizing bad behavior for sitting on your couch, not doing anything, and penalizing that level of success of what's created this country, we're going backwards. And, there's places like China out there where if you do that, we're getting closer and closer to communism and further away from what this country was built on. And most importantly, I didn't serve in the Army or the Marines or the Navy, but people laid down their lives for us to be able to make that choice, and we owe it to them to be successful. We owe it to them to not settle for mediocrity and make this the greatest country in the world.
I agree with that 100%. Tell me what you think. I like the show Billions.
Yeah.
I like that show.
Yeah.
And in one of the most recent episodes of this new season, there was a statement made, and I typed it out so I could ask you about it.
Okay.
All right. And I love this. So she's basically justifying the links that they go to accomplish some great milestones in the business.
Okay.
And she says, money is just a symbol of what we are working for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great statement. Kind of what we were just talking about. It's not about having piles of money. It's about having piles of choice and freedom.
Oh,
that's really what it is. And as a capitalistic country, which I believe is the way to go, that's what that's going to do for you. And look, there are people out there who need help. There's people who are born not as fortunate. They're not physically capable of doing those things. And I know you're very involved with giving back. And I think that's an obligation to people who do have 2 arms, 2 legs, a clear mind, and the ability to go out and succeed. I think we need to support those people. However, there's a large part of this country that we're disincentivizing from doing things like that. And that's what I think we need to rally around is how do we start bringing financial literacy to people at an earlier age? How do we start promoting entrepreneurism? How do we start giving them success early? And when you do that, when people start making money and they see, oh, hey, there's this correlation. When I work hard, I do better in life. They continue to do those things. But when you do the opposite, we're going to get the opposite results.
I want to thank all of our loyal fans that spread across all 50 states and 14 different countries. It's absolutely amazing. Folks, help us keep spreading the word, right? Share your favorite episodes with friends and make sure that you are liking and subscribing to the Hitstreak on all digital platforms. Thanks again, and we look forward to more. When did you feel like, I can tell you when I felt like I had made it, right? And it was for Rhea and I, like when I started my insurance agency in 2013, I literally didn't have a pot to piss in. I had to borrow money for the state license from my dad.
Yeah.
And that was when he told me, don't come back. That's it. Greatest gift he gave me was that moment right
Absolutely.
there. It was on me. You know what I mean? And, but in 15, we got real serious about the agency. I brought my wife on. And then in 16, we started helping other people launch theirs. And my wife and I we had all these financial milestones, just growing the business bank account.
Yeah.
Okay. And we were able to, we went on a cruise with some friends. And for the first time ever, we went on this cruise on this great vacation. And everything we didn't have to worry about one penny until we got back to just reconcile everything. That was a moment for us where we both kind of looked at each other and were like, we can do this. It was almost like we had to see it to believe it, but we really needed to believe it to see it. When did you feel like your first milestone where you felt like you'd made it? You looked in the mirror and like, I did it.
Yeah. Well, I'm probably the biggest critic of myself. And so I think I still have a long way to go because I'm comparing to myself to people who've, achieved greatness. And I think, look, anyone can go from average to good, but go from good to great is extremely difficult. And so that's really what I'm achieving for. So I don't know that I made it yet. However, I'm very humble and I'm very grateful. And I give all thanks to Jesus, who's my Lord and Savior, who's put me in a position to be where I'm at today. And so I'm not ungrateful. I realize I've done things, accomplished things, have access to things in my life that other people don't have. However, I still, I talked about giving back. That's one of the things that I think today where I'm at in life, whether it's an employee or a charity that I'm involved with, I get a lot more excited about seeing my employees buy their first home or seeing, whatever it is that's accomplished through the charity or the church that I'm giving to. And so for me, there's still a lot more that I want to give back. And that's the next phase of wealth building for me is not how much more can I do? Because I've already driven the nice cars and after a while, Nick, that stuff it gets a little bit old and it's not as rewarding. And so now it's, how do I give back? How do I give other people the opportunity to achieve some of the things I do? And I haven't gotten there yet to that level of wealth where you've already taken care of yourself and next generation of your family. How do you now give it all back? That's really what I'm aspiring to do now.
A guy named Roger Patton, who was my pastor before he actually moved, he did the opposite. He moved to California.
Yeah.
I'm going to see him at Thanksgiving. He changed my life when I was at my worst and worked with me and then fiance, and because I couldn't afford to marry her, we had a kid at home and everything else. Yeah. But he told me something one time. He was our pastor at church. I was the church drummer. We were always there. We were doing a lot of stuff. And he said, Nick, everybody can give their time. Not everybody can give their money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought, that's really powerful. And I thought, that's really, really powerful. And he was, pushing me to just pick something and be really good at it. I was trying to do too many things at once. And when I did that, all of a sudden, I had more money to give back. And you're right. It is like, those are, when Rhea and I make our financial goals, they start with what we want to do for others.
Yeah.
And, where we want to give and where we want to make impact. And that lets us know a lot of our business goals kind of stem from those milestones,
Yeah, I heard actually you say something the last couple of days. I was listening to you on social media, and you said, and I'm going to butcher this, but essentially you said that money is the result of making an impact in other people's lives. And so you build businesses with the idea of, how do I make an impact? How do I improve, change people's lives, solve a problem for them? And then money comes. And I think a lot of young entrepreneurs in particular that might be listening to this, they do that backwards. They think, how do I make money? And then they try to go out and solve a problem. And inherently, when you do that, you wind up staying broke. So I feel like, again, it goes back to that scarcity versus how do I really create a problem and do things in the world? And the more I give back, the more I realize that my success is not based on me. It's based off of God. It's based off other people helping me get to that next level. Lo and behold, I get more. It's unbelievable.
I learned, and it's probably, I learned this from Troy McQuaig, who is the CEO of U.S. Health Group. He was another man that changed my life forever. And doing what he did, I watched it. He's created more millionaires in that company. Yeah. Like, it's unbelievable. And he would always stand on stage, and like everything was all about like, your purpose, mission led. But he said it best. He said, income is the outcome, not the objective.
Yep, so absolutely.
And that, like, again, the more we fed our purpose, the more we fed our mission, the more we were able to do. And it's funny, like, we had more.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that. And you said on backup, you said something also, is that, can't remember who it was, but they got you to focus in on one thing.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of people are trying to find their passion, or they're trying to figure out, what should I do, or what's the next best thing? AI is coming, and they're trying to figure out what they do, and they're taking way too much time doing that. And I could tell you, I had a wealth management firm that I sold a few years ago, where we dealt with people primarily $10 million and above. And we had hundreds of clients, which means there was a lot of successful people that I got to learn a lot from. And when you start looking at what they did to achieve the money that they did, it was everything. It was a pallet company. It was veterinarian service. It was everything. And I think what a lot of people don't realize, and what I've learned through working with wealthy people over time, it's not necessarily what you do to make the money. It's making the money and winning that people become addicted to. Like, one of my wealthiest clients had a pest control company. Like, I guarantee you he didn't grow up as a kid saying, I want to spray bugs for a living, but he made so much money and was able to make so much impact, and he constantly won and grew, that he was one of the happiest guys I know. And so what it is I think young people, adults, whatever it is, you need to dial in on that one thing. And honestly, it could be anything, but how do you use that one thing to make an impact on people's lives in a way that's way more impactful than anyone else can? And that could be through anything. And when you do that and you learn how to scale that, that's when you start to create wealth.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Folks, we're hanging with the Rob Luna. And check it out, folks. His book comes out next week. It's called Close Your Wealth Gap, Financial Lessons to Upgrade Your Life. Rob, where are all the places they can find that book?
Yeah, so you can, I think it's going to be in all the bookstores, but where I bought my first copy of my own book was on Amazon. But you can go to Books A Million, you can go to Barnes and Noble. I think probably the easiest place is Amazon, though.
There you go. Folks, check him out. Also, access to everything on his website, robluna.com, and on Instagram and Twitter at the Luna Rob. Right?
That's it.
Fantastic. All right, dude. So I know you didn't come from much.
Yeah.
Right. So I got to hear about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I told you a story where I grew up, very happy middle class household. We had everything I ever wanted. You know what I mean? Very blessed. Tell me about your background a little bit.
Yeah, well, it wasn't that. So I grew up, I was born in Jersey, but we moved out. My dad got a job in Southern California when I was 8 years old, moved out there. My parents got divorced. My mom got involved with drugs. My dad kind of took off, and we wound up moving. This was in the mid 80s. Which, if anyone knows Southern California in the mid 80s, just complete gang violence, drive-by shootings. And I lived, in a neighborhood that was really the epicenter of that. I lost a brother to gang violence. And it was just one of those situations where sometimes you can't see beyond your nose. Everything around me was destruction. It was drugs. It was gang violence. And again, like I would love to say it was me and I was this great person, but the reason I know God exists is because, I continuously believe that there was a better opportunity for me. I continuously believe that the world around me, which was a very small world at that time, was not meant for me. It was sports. Similar to you, I played baseball, but it was really kind of wrestling that took me and got me a scholarship, got me out of what I was doing. It was coaches, it was police officers just telling me, hey, you're better than this, right? And that sometimes, a lot of people ask me like, well, who is your mentor? Well, really, when I look back, what was the one thing that really kind of changed my life and put me on a path was, one day we were out there doing whatever it was, we did at that age. Some cops pulled us over and they looked around and one of the cops said like, what are you doing, man? Like, you are so much better than this crowd that you're hanging out with. Like, I see what you're doing in school. Why don't you go to college? Why don't you do something better and get away from these idiots? And really, Nick, no one ever told me that in my life. It was the opposite of like, you're not going to be anything. You're a loser. Your brother did this. Your parents did that. And for me as a kid, that's all that I needed to hear. And I took that opportunity. I left Southern California, went out to Arizona. I did wind up doing my undergrad, completing it at Arizona State. And it was just one of those things where when I got outside of that and had an opportunity, I started in financial services. Back then, we would get newspapers to find jobs and it says stockbroker trainee. And I said, well, I don't know. Let me go ahead and try this. I was 20 years old, got the job and realized like, hey, dude, this is your opportunity. And so I just went, like I said before, all in on that one thing. And I said, how can I be the best financial advisor in the world? What do I need to do? And I dedicated my life to that. And I like to say, I know a lot about very little. I don't spend a lot of time reading. Everyone says like, hey, do you know this guy? I know that guy. And I'm embarrassed. I didn't even read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I just focused on what do I need to do, the information I need to do to become the best, which alienated a lot of other things. So I love hearing from other people who are specialists in different areas and focused, their whole lives on certain things, because I know the commitment to that. I watch the Olympics and I'll see figure skating, which I don't really like, but when they win that gold medal, I'm there teared up because I know the commitment and dedication, to excellence. So for me, it was just that path, that opportunity that I believe that God put in front of me. I stayed on that road. It's still, what I do today. And by learning that, I'm able to help people through financial literacy, through entrepreneurism, do the exact same thing that I did. And it's really those two things that changed my life.
Wow. So I want to unpackage that a little bit more, right? Yeah. So when you went to Arizona State, you said, right?
Yep.
Out of school. So when I started my insurance policy or agency, there was nobody to pay me.
Yep.
Like I had to go sell something to make a commission to get paid, and everything started from that.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that's the greatest way to do it because I owned it. It was mine. I earned it.
Yep.
Right. Nobody gave it. And so that was what Troy used to say also. He said, I'm not here to give you a handout. I'm here to give you a hand up.
For sure.
And I love that.
Yep.
And, but like, I started to study selling, and I was like, it dawned on me one day as a baseball player, I played at an extremely high level, and I was like, I paid attention to things that amateurs didn't pay attention to in that sport. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, when it comes to money, I'm really like the amateur in baseball. When it comes to money, I need to get really good at money. I need to get really good at sales. Mm-hmm. And I started with sales because I knew that money would come from that.
Yep.
Right. And the more I studied sales and the more I practiced it and rehearsed it. And the more times I got shot down and told no, the more shots I got to take, the more shots I started making. Tell me about your journey. And I mean, because starting as a financial advisor and all those things, it's basically the same type thing, right?
Yeah.
Nobody said, here's your $120,000 a year salary.
Yeah, no, unfortunately not. I think it started, really young though. I had a job. I look back at some of the things I did as a kid, and now being a parent, I'm like, how the hell was I doing that when I was 12 years old? I was in, like I told you about the neighborhoods I live in. I was working for this. It was called the Student Work Program, which I don't know. I don't think it was anything legit. It was basically this guy that everyone found around that had like a cargo van that he would pick a bunch of us kids up after school in, no seats in the back. We just all pile in, about 15 of us. We'd each get this box of candy. And this was back in like 86, 87, where I was selling Snicker bars for $5 door to door.
My man.
So you can, understand the profit margins that this guy was making off of that. But I did that for 3 years, from 12 to 15, where I would go door to door Monday through Sunday, 7 days a week, 5-6 hours a day. I mean, full time on the weekends. But doing that, I think, was probably the best experience I ever had. You haven't done anything until you've sold something door to door. Especially at someone's dinner time, you're knocking on their door trying to sell them a $5 candy bar. And then I would realize, well, hey, look, because they always had that excuse. And they go, we don't eat candy. And they would push me away. And I started figuring, So then I went back to the guy and said, hey, can we sell tea or something that's healthy? And so we brought that into their box. And I kind of learned the art of overcoming objections at a very, very early age. And then I went and cleaned cars. I did everything. I actually created my first LLC when I was 16. It was called Sports Card City, where I would go to the shows on the weekend once I became 16. And I was flipping baseball cards and basketball cards before PSA grading and all those things. And so I've been working since I'm 12 years old. And, I look back at it and I kind of laugh and say, well, I wouldn't want my daughter doing those things. However, I could tell you, working from people with wealth, just handing people things, not making them go through those experiences, it's something I battle today. My daughter's getting ready to turn 16. I could afford, thank God, to buy her any car I want. However, I said, hey, you've got to pay for half that car doing things. And because those are the types of lessons that you need to instill. And so, look, I try to create a more guarded, secure environment for my daughter. But I always say, it's like, I learned a lot in school, but it's really the adversity that I had to overcome that I believe who's made me the person that I am today.
Well, and how old's your daughter again?
She's going to be 16 in January. 16.
So I got a 2-year-old. So I'm going to be calling you because when it comes to my son, like I got that one. Like, I mean, he's tough as nails, and that's on purpose.
Right.
Nothing's easy for him. Yes. But my daughter, I can't promise that it's going to be that way.
Well, and the good thing is, I think in life you learn more from the mistakes you made. So if you can learn from other people's mistakes, that's even better.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. The Hitstreak is powered by our partners at HitLab Creative Studios. Whether it's launching your brand new podcast, rebranding your current podcast, or taking advantage of any of their other content packages specifically for your social media needs, the HitLab is a one-stop shop for you. Visit hitlabstudio.com for more. All right, I was taking some notes while you're talking. So, all right, so you don't know I'm going to ask you this either. So I'm going to tell you my craziest door-to-door story, because in insurance, back when I started, we didn't have all the digital. It wasn't digitized yet. We were still going to people's homes. We could only sell in our state, so a lot of times 5-6 hours a day was in the car.
Right.
So I'm really excited. It's one of my first appointments on my own. And I typed the address in, and it's like an hour away. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going. See you later. And I hit the road, and I'm going there, and like it's one of those places that's so off the beaten path that the GPS says you're there, but you're not, and you got to figure it out. And I finally found it. It was like a double wide. All right. And so I didn't know if I was in the right place, but I went up and knocked on the door, and the lady that answered the door, I honestly, it was like a movie. She opened the door, and I didn't see her for the longest time because there was so much cigarette smoke coming out of the front door that she finally appeared. And I asked her, I was like, hey, am I at the right place? And she said, yeah. And she said, come on in. And they got this little dog that's really happy to see me, is humping my leg real bad. I go in there and I sit at her kitchen table. This is over health insurance. All right. And her poor husband had just had heart surgery, like the scar. He's no shirt on. My man's got no shirt on. He's got the oxygen tank and like four cigarettes hanging out of his mouth. And we sit down, the dog's on my leg. I got my stuff. I'm so distracted. I don't really know how they're going to pull this off. Honestly, they're not eligible for anything anyways, because their health's so bad. But I'm figuring it out, and I'm going through there. And when I left that home that day, first of all, I had to leave my clothes in the garage to go in the house because it smelled so bad. But I knew at that moment that, all right, I'm going to do this, but like I can't do this part for long. I got to like there's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
And that was when we really dove into social media and figured out there's got to be a way to market besides like just this.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's got to be able to feed off of people we know in our network. But like I'll never forget that moment because I was there for probably 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And they went through like 4,000 cigarettes in the time that we were there. And he's smoking with the oxygen tank there. I didn't know if we were going to blow up or not. They were super nice people. Nothing against the people. It's just you don't know that you're going to walk into that, you know. And I don't smoke either. So.
Yeah.
What's your craziest story?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I think those, again, going back to the adversity that we have to overcome, I think having that experience, as horrible as what it was, that's what gives you a greater appreciation for the things you're doing today. That's what kind of got you to get to that next level and do things. And I'd imagine, I don't know for sure, but you probably didn't have the relationships at that point in time that you had today, or you wouldn't have been there, right?
That's
I think,
right.
you know, we talked about Brad Lee, and he says, the more hands you shake, the more money you make. And, you know, I think that's so true. And one thing I always say is that everything, either good or bad, that's happened in my life, I could point to a very specific relationship. And so I think, you know, what we learn is, like, I built my business. You asked a little bit earlier, I don't know that we got to it, in terms of, okay, in wealth management. Look, wealth management, the first job I got, they said, hey, Rob, go ahead and write down all the people that you know with money and let's start calling them. And that took about 3 seconds because I didn't know anybody with money. So I built my business off of dinner seminars, is what we would do at that time. So we'd go to a steakhouse. Back then, we used to send out a mailer of 5,000 and you get like a 0.5% response rate. You get 25, 30 people in the room. And out of those 25 to 30, 22 of them were there for the free meal.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to talk about financial services. They're wondering when dessert's coming. And, you know, it's discouraging. It's frustrating. I'm sure like you were feeling in that double wide. But at the end of the day, it's about repetition. It's about learning from each experience. And look, I was able to bring in about $50 to $60 million over 3 to 4 years from continually doing those dinner seminars. And there was times where, look, I would spend $3,000 that I didn't have on that dinner and I wouldn't get one client.
Yeah.
But you just keep going. You keep going. You keep going. And I think that's what happens to most people in life. You look at statistics. A lot of businesses are like this in wealth management. It's like, they said that back then it used to be the Series 7 we'd all take. They say, okay, after someone takes the Series 7, like 65% of people are gone after the first 3 years. It's because they hit those roadblocks, they hit that adversity, and they don't come from that clay, weren't cut from that cloth where they know they just got to keep battling through it.
Right.
And I think the thing that really helped me out a lot, Nick, it sounded like you had supportive parents, but I feel like they did this to you as well. As at the end of the day, I knew there was no safety net. Like, no one was going to pay my rent for me. No one was going to put food on the table. And when that's the outcome and you've got no one that you can count on to do that for you, you do what you have to do. But I learned at an early age the power and the value of relationships. And at the end of the day, I think it's the relationships that I had that allow me to be where I'm at today. That's what I mean. Look, to get your first $1 million client when you don't know anybody, look, that's a CPA that opened up that door for me. When I left the firm that I sold, my minimum account was $10 million at that time.
Wow.
The air is pretty thin up there. You need to have the right relationships if that's the field you want to play on.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. So proximity is power.
Absolutely.
Right. And you know, quoting Brad again, he said it the other day. He said, if you got to choose between money or relationships, you have to choose relationships. He said, if you choose money, you'll end up with none.
Yeah.
The relationships or the money. And if you choose relationships, you'll end up with both.
Yeah. Is Brad sponsoring this show?
I know, right? I know. Every time I just love hanging out with him because it's like he's so you know, he's a really smart dude. They don't get enough credit for how smart he is.
He is, and he does it in a way that he makes me cry every time I see. He's such a funny dude. So
Yeah,
great guy.
Absolutely. You know what? Let me ask you this about proximity, because as an athlete, I noticed the higher up in the ranks that I got, especially at the professional level, you realize that the difference in talent is not there anymore once you get to the top. it's like, who's willing to push themselves
Absolutely.
the farthest. It's all mindset once you get to the top. Is that how it is with money?
Yeah, I think that's how it is with anything, right? I think, the idea of, being great, going legendary, you're an athlete. I worked with a lot of, NFL linemen. So, one of them that I work with, it's public, Levi Brown. He played at Penn State. He was number 5 overall, first round draft in 2008, signed a $62 million contract with the Arizona Cardinals, which at that time was the largest ever for an offensive lineman. And, he wound up tearing his tricep very early on. And yeah, he recovered. But when you're just a split second off the line, because psychologically you're afraid to push a little bit harder because you might tear that injury again, at that level, you're not there because you're average. You're there because everybody is great. But I think, and why I loved working with athletes is eventually they all became entrepreneurs, and they took a lot of that mindset and work ethic into the world of business. And a lot of them I was able to coach being very successful when I gave them the roadmap. Why I love them is they're able to kind of put in that work. But yes, it's, we all know it's not the big things. Everyone thinks they need to make these huge changes. It's just doing the little things consistently is really what separates the people that are excellent from average.
Man, the little things are the big thing.
Absolutely.
Right. Tell me what you think of this quote, because again, when it comes to money, there's a lot of entitlement out there.
Absolutely.
And, I might have been guilty of that too at some degree. You got to grow out of that, right?
Yeah.
Kind of get past that. So my buddy Hunter Bledsoe, it's one of my favorite quotes, and the most viral clip we've ever put out is me talking about this quote. And the quote goes, "Life is fair. Everybody's price is just different." What do you think about that quote?
That's a great quote. I might steal that one. I have a rule. I give credit 2 times. After that, it's mine. I tell people the same thing. If you take stuff from me, just quote me twice, and then it's yours. Yeah, I think so, and I think that that goes back also. Everybody's definition of wealth is completely different, right? And I think Instagram kind of commoditizes and tries to tell us what wealth should mean to you. Dave Ramsey should say what wealth should mean to you, how you should obtain wealth. And my whole thing was, when I was working as a financial advisor, was, I don't care what it is that you want to do in life. That's not me to judge or say you're spending too much or you're spending too little. However, it always was, I don't want you to settle for anything less that you can be. I want you to tell me what you want to be, and then we're going to build a path to get there. But importantly, put the Instagram down, turn off Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman or whoever it is, Grant Cardone, me that you're listening to, and figure out what money means to you. And then when you figure out that, build the path towards it. And it might be a Ferrari if that's what you want and that really makes you happy, great. Or it might just be a great Ford pickup truck. And one thing that one opportunity that I had was to sit down with a guy named Jim Senegal. Most people won't know him until I say this. He was the longest tenured CEO of Costco ever. And so I sat down in Jim's office in Seattle for a couple hours speaking with him. And Jim's a billionaire. And, I was in his office first, kind of like when you came, your staff was here. I waited for you to make the grand entrance. And then I was the same thing with Jim. I went and sat in his office. And when I sat in his office, what do you think his office looked like? This is a billionaire.
Okay.
What do you think it looked like?
Did he even have a desk?
He did, but it was a Costco desk. It was very, very what you would expect from a Costco CEO. And when Jim pulled up, they said, "Oh, go meet him out back." He pulled up in a Ford, I think it was F-250, F-350 truck. This is a guy who could afford anything.
Yeah.
But these are the things that made him happy. These were the things that made him him. And so I think, again, when I was younger, I used to go after the people with, at the time, Mercedes or BMW. Those are my clients. And then I'd pull the cover back and realize they don't have anything. And so what people look like, how people sound, what people do, especially in Instagram, what you see them doing, their cars, their vacations, it tells you nothing about their worth. It only tells you about how much they spend. So figure out for yourself, what is it that you want? What is your own definition of wealth? And then get with somebody to put a roadmap to get there. And most importantly, once you know what you want to do, and I always tell people, work right to left. Figure out where you want to be. Start where you're at today. Start working there, but you can't do it alone. Whether it's a mentor, financial advisor, a boss, whatever it is, make sure you have somebody holding you accountable to get there. Because look, you're an athlete. I'm an athlete. but I know how to do every exercise in the book. I know exactly how I need to eat. But unless I have a personal trainer that I'm paying money for to hold me accountable, I'm not going to reach the highest level that I am. And I think that's what most people are missing in life. If they've got everything else, they don't have that accountability to push them to the highest level.
Man, and you said the word roadmap.
Yep.
We talk about this a lot here, how, 9 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10 people use a GPS, the app on their phone to find out where to go places. But only when they're driving, not a roadmap of life.
Exactly.
And if you treat like, is there a GPS for the roadmap of life? Has anybody made one yet? Do we know?
Well, and I think Nick, that's a great metaphor, right? Is GPS. Everyone understands GPS, and for those who are a little bit older like me, when I used to travel, we travel somewhere with my family, we go 30, 40 miles to a neighborhood that we didn't know before. I was talking with your staff before, they had the Thomas guide, or for us, it wasn't GPS. We get lost. What did you do? You pull over to a gas station and you hope that the gas station attendant would give you the right information, but you figure out how much longer did it take us to get to that destination versus we use Apple or Google today, plug it in. Maybe there's a little bit of an error, but we're there in the fastest time possible. And people, yes, will do that when driving to a physical destination, but they're not doing that to get to their mental destination, to their wealth destination, to their health destination. So figuring out how do I get there in the quickest way possible is something that I think most people need to focus on.
Absolutely. It's so cool. A GPS will say, hey, I want to go here. And it'll tell you how long it's going to take to get there. It'll give you 4 or 5 different options to get there. If something happens along the way, it'll reroute you and fix your time and put you back in place and everything else. And that's probably what you're doing with a lot of your clients that you're coaching.
That's what I'm trying to do. That's what I pay information for, is how do I expedite that process, right? How do we go back to like what we were saying before? I don't want to be the person to say, if I only knew then what I know now, because if we knew that, we'd be wealthier, we'd be healthier, we'd be doing things. And so that's really when you pay for education, when you pay for knowledge, you're paying to expedite that learning curve, right? Because the sooner, just the compounding effect, I could tell an 18-year-old, hey, if you put $60 away, by the time you're 50, you're going to be a millionaire. But when you come to me at 30, now it's, $1,000 a week. Nobody wants to do that and they stay broke. So how do we get to people, whatever it is they're trying to do with health information, business information, financial information, and we get that information to them in a way they can act upon it earlier? That's how we change the world. How do we solve the wealth gap? We get people to have $1 million by the time they're 50 by putting $70 away. But when I tell people about how to do this, it's like, I just solved, the national debt, or I just solved, the crisis between Palestine and Israel. Look, it's really simple knowledge, but most people don't have access to it.
Man. Folks, we're hanging out with Rob Luna, founder of Rob Luna Wealth Academy, CEO of Real Talk Holdings, and author of the brand new book, Close Your Wealth Gap, Financial Lessons to Upgrade Your Life. Folks, you can get the book next week on Amazon. You can check out robluna.com for any and all things that Rob Luna's got going on. And of course, Rob's on Instagram and Twitter at Luna Rob, right?
The Luna Rob.
At the Luna Rob. That's right. The Luna Rob. So, all right, I want to talk to you about one more thing.
Yep.
I want you to define for me rich versus wealth. So I how I've defined it here is I say I'm the richest person here because I have the most money. Dale's up front. He's the wealthiest person here because he has the most time. Dale's here because he wants to be. He's actually retired. He don't have to be here at all.
Right.
He's here by choice. We're still questioning his sanity. But Dale the super male, as we call him.
Yep.
But I say he's the wealthiest guy here because he's got time. I'm the richest guy because I have money.
Right.
What's your definition of rich versus wealth?
Well, yeah, like you said, to me, that's work optional, right? He's here because he wants to be. It's part of his purpose. It's part of what he gets up for living the life. And I think that's the definition really, or the difference between rich and wealth. Wealth allows you to do the things that you want to do without having to do something that you don't want to do. And I think there's a lot of people that are rich out there, and they're kind of they're making a lot of money. They might be making $500,000 a year, but they're spending $498,000 a year. I've seen those people. And that's the problem, right? Is when you're living that type of lifestyle, you're one injury away, you're one loss of a client away, you're one a pandemic away from losing all that. Yeah. And so that's kind of one of the things where I worked with professional athletes is I said, hey, you're going to probably make you're going to make more money this year than you probably will for the rest of your life. So how do we figure out what is the lifestyle that you really want to live? Because rich would be just spending everything you're making right now. And a lot of them do that. That's why they're bankrupt. But I said, okay, what's the lifestyle that we really want? Let's figure out how do we create a passive stream of income that's going to fund that. And people that are wealthy, again, they have built, whether it's real estate, and it's usually a combination, real estate, private businesses, stocks, bonds, they built that income stream that hits their account, whether or not they get out of bed and do something that they're doing today, that's going to fund their lifestyle for the rest of their life. To me, that's wealth, is when you can pick a lifestyle you really love, and that's funded through passive income, whatever type of passive income that is.
Beautifully said.
The Hitstreak is powered by Team Hyder. Team Hyder has been serving you for 11 years and has racked up over 20 national and local awards for excellence in all areas. When it comes to finding the right health plan, we need to consider your family's needs and your family's budget. That's what we do to serve you. To look further and to book an appointment, visit teamhyder.com.
All right, so the book.
Yep.
So my wife and I like to read books like this, and then our 14-year-old son will read them as well. So like we read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it so happened they had a teenage version of it.
Yep.
And so he reads it, and then when I take him to school, we usually talk about what he read the night before, right? So he's explaining it to me, and we do the same thing with sermons at church on Sunday. As soon as we're in the car, what'd you get from that sermon?
Yep.
I want to know so we can apply it. So with your book, definitely like. Everybody likes to say, is this book for me? Am I the right? Am I the audience for his book? Right. So your audience for this book is really for anybody.
Yeah. Well, that was the idea with the book. Also, Nick, quite honestly, is a lot of people would come to me when I was in wealth management, managing money. Hey, Rob, can you help me with money? And it sounds ridiculous, but like they'd have $200,000, $300,000, and that's a lot of money that they work for. But for me, because wealth management is limited by the amount of time that you have to spend with each individual, it wasn't enough. So I'd have to kind of say, hey, go here, go there. I just can't help you. And so the idea was when I wrote this book for $30, everybody can get access to the information. And I didn't hold anything back. This wasn't like, hey, let's write a book. A lot of people do this. Let's write a book to get them to know just enough about you to get them and come and pay a lot of money to get the rest. I put everything in this book. I give even if you want to invest in stocks, I give specific ticker symbols of what to go and buy, whether you're investing for your kid who's 1 year old or whether you're 55 years old and you're behind where you should be. And then also look, because financial advice, it's going to be in the book, the broad general information you need, but then you need to take that information, apply it to your own life. And that really comes down to figuring where you're at. My website that we're creating that will launch simultaneously with the book is going to have free calculators.
Really?
Where you could take that information, plug it in, and get specifics to your outcome. So I talk about this in the book. I didn't want there to be any excuses where somebody leaves this book and they go back to doing the same thing they did before.
Let's go.
If you do, bad on you. If you want to really learn, change your life, I'm going to give you the specifics in the book of how to do that.
How can parents read the book and then use it as a tool? Because again, they're not getting this in school.
Yeah.
They're not getting any of this information in school. This is totally extracurricular,
For sure.
supplemental. And think about it. If your kid plays sports, you probably don't rely on the coach at school to give them everything. You get them, you hire a coach or they get lessons from somebody, an expert somewhere, right? So how can they use this book as a tool to raise their kids? Like, is there a certain age that you would recommend that it's time to start exposing them to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, once your kids are about 6 or 7, through my experience, is the right age. And so like I do show you how even if you got a newborn, a lot of people are doing, and I won't really say what it is, but a lot of the wrong things that people are trying to sell them what to do. So I'll show you, even if you've got a newborn, how you can give them a leg up. And I think that's more important today than ever, because I do believe when you look at things like artificial intelligence, the world is changing and the speed of change is much faster than it's ever been before. So doing things like you're doing, creating a family business, giving them an opportunity to be an entrepreneur, maybe, and this is kind of controversial, maybe building their social media networks up at an earlier age. I mean, you look at some of these kids now making millions of dollars by the time they're 13, 14. I don't think that's a bad idea. But I think, with my daughter, once they're 6, 7, they start going to Disney, or maybe they like Roblox and they're doing some things there. They're buying clothes or whatever it is. So you can kind of teach them, hey, you can buy the stock of those companies. And by putting a little bit of money, you actually own those companies.
Oh, wow.
And have them following. That's kind of how I learned about money, was through baseball cards. And we used to have the Beckett back then, and we buy a Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card at $50, and then 6 months later it's worth $100. Like, wow, I like this. It becomes addictive. And so people ask me, well, how do I learn about stocks? Well, first I'll teach you the basics, but the way you learn is you do. You got to go out there, and even if it's $50, invest it into one share of a stock and start doing things. So I feel 6, 7 years old, they have enough of the capabilities to start understanding it, and then you just kind of stay consistent through them. And I give a lot of lessons in there. Like, a lot of people don't know, Nick, if you are an entrepreneur, if you have your own business, you can hire your kids. Oh. And that's a tax deduction for you. You can deduct that, use that money to open up a Roth IRA for them, and they could start growing money tax-free. By the time they're 30, 40 years old, could have $1 million, and you got a tax deduction from it. Again, it's these little things I teach and put in the book very specifically that nobody's learning about, that when people read this book, I promise you, you will leave and start hopefully changing the things that you've been doing.
Wow. That's awesome. With Ethan, we started doing something with him when he was really young, and he first started getting, birthday money from grandparents and all that stuff. Everything was 50-50 with him. If he wanted something,
great strategy.
We'd split it with him. And, he always got incentivized to do the right things versus the wrong things, but he was penalized for the wrong things. That still happens, say, Sunday's payday at the house every single week. And, now he's got a girlfriend that he really likes. And, they went on a little skating date at the skating rink last week. He spent $58 because he fed her and they get in and everything else. And I was like, bro, that's like, 2 weeks of you just doing all the right things, and all that kind of stuff. So it was really cool. He's carrying his wallet. That was, we just started letting him do that. He proved he can keep up with the phone. But again, it's just, money is a tool. It's a thing that everybody has. Some people just have more than others.
Right.
But like when we started thinking, like, I was like, if I have $100 there, that's 100 soldiers that I'm sending out, and they can't come back without another soldier. Right. And then the real question is just how long are they going to be gone?
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. Like, I feel people are spending money paycheck to paycheck because they don't understand the gratification of passive income. Mm-hmm. And so what I mean by that is, one of the things I would start doing with some of my younger clients earlier on is saying, okay, look, if you want to get a car payment or whatever it is you could do, that's cool, but you can't do it unless you've got enough passive income. Mm-hmm. So I started doing that for myself at an early age, just buying dividend stocks. And so you can reinvest the dividends and buy more shares. But I had one account where I said, look, I'm going to get those dividends sent to my bank account whenever they pay out monthly, quarterly. And before I knew it, it was like $1,200 a month, $1,300 a month. And I said, okay, well, that's the car payment or lease, however, what makes tax sense for you that I could afford. And I wouldn't do it unless it was paid for by passive income. But then lo and behold, those dividends got up to $2,000, $3,000. I didn't necessarily adjust my car payment up. It's like, okay, well, that's something I could put towards something else. And it starts becoming addictive because you realize I have a trade-off now. I can go and buy this or spend money on this, and that's gone. And, some things are worth it. Great experience with your family. But some things we just do and we're like, wow, why did I do that? I could have put it into this, and that would have been money that's coming in every single month. So again, it's about having those experiences, thinking different, that gets people to change their behavior.
I didn't understand. And it was Jay Brassfield, the owner of Shop Construction. And I coached his son years ago when they were like 13 and 14 years old. And of course, I'm fresh out of professional ball. I'm broke as hell. Yep. Like, what I get from coaching those kids ain't near enough to live off of. I'm doing other things. And I asked him, like, hey man, like, I was just infatuated with this journey. He said, dude, the hardest milestone to ever hit was my first 100,000. Mm-hmm. He was like, because I hit $500,000 in half the time it took me to hit the 100, and then million came right after that. And I was like, well, why? He goes, the magic word is called compound. Yep. He's like, but it can compound both ways.
Right.
Problems can compound versus just like the success can. And man, was he right? Because again, the time, all the lessons you learn when you're getting to that first milestone, you have those going forward. Plus, you have a little bit more money. Plus, you have some relationships, and that math equation is really good for you if you know how to solve that problem.
Absolutely, right. Yeah, and that's what I always say, and it's about compounding, is that time's the greatest enemy and it's the greatest ally of wealth. right? So, I mean,
that's powerful.
It's everything, right? Like I said, when you start young, it's $50 a week. When you start old, it's $1,000 a week. So you don't do anything. If you start young with the right relationships, and that's why, back in the day, it used to be about what college did you go to, because the better the quality of college, the better the network that you built. And those are the jobs that you're going to want when you're older. So when you can get your kids into the right school, you're getting them earlier on into a group, a community, a network where they're going to do better. If you get into that network when you're 40 or 50, it's not going to be as good because you're not going to have as much time to compound those relationships. The corollary, if you're fed bad stuff early on in an early age, you're hanging around with the wrong people, you have the wrong money decisions. I'll talk about Brad again. Brad talks about that as he learned about money later. He says, I was making tons of money, but I wasn't saving any money. Yeah. And, I was living the life and everything looked good. But at the end of the day, I was one this away from not having any money. And then he learned those lessons later. Again, if I only knew then what I know now, it's, getting people to know now what they should know. And, that's it. Exactly what you said, expediting the learning curve of everything good and then compounding that over time. That's how you create real wealth.
Folks, everybody would agree they want more money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, well, what do you know about it? Are you an expert at money?
Right.
You know what I mean? And what may be an expert for you, like, well, again, you're competing with the guys with the money, so what do they know? And then what do all of them have in common that they know? And you should have that too. I used to think I was the exception to the rule.
No, you're not. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is there's a lot of people who make a lot of money, but they spend a lot of money and they've become a slave to what they're doing. And that's a horrible thing because Nick, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I love what I do. You love what you do, but you probably would rather spend time with your family.
Yes.
There's things that you'd want to do. I'm here today. I love you. I'm promoting your book. I'm exciting, but I'd rather be with my daughter. I'd rather be with my wife than what I'm doing right now. But I haven't achieved what I want to achieve. So I got to continue to do these things. However, I know by doing these things over and over again, I'm going to get to that outcome sooner than later. And so look, life's not easy. Making the right choices, making sacrifices isn't easy. And so when I wrote this book, I was cognizant of the fact of all the negative connotations around wealth, building wealth, and what you have to do to save. And this guy's just going to tell me live beneath my means and all those things. And I don't. I try to make it super simple. I try to make it easy. That's why I love things like 401ks when people have those, just taking a little bit out of your check, or if you don't, dollar cost averaging, having something from your paycheck, $50 go away. Because when I do that for people at an early age, back to compounding, before they know it, it's like, hey, I got 10 grand and I didn't even miss that $25. And now I've got $50 or $100,000.
Yeah. So
it's getting people to do those good behaviors without realizing they're actually even doing them. That's what I try to kind of trick people into the book of doing those things.
Well, I wanted everybody to know, Rob, that they see on Fox and MSNBC, Newsmax, and they're like, oh, it's another rich guy telling me what to do.
Yeah.
And, they got to understand the story. Like, you got to get to know these people before you cast your judgment on them, right? You know what I mean? You shouldn't cast your judgment anyways. The Lord does that for us, right? Sure. So it's not our job. But a lot of people do. And, but get to know those people. And it's just so cool to hear your story and how you came from really nothing. And honestly, like I can't imagine losing a brother like that. And it's just, it gives hope. It's hope. You're a sign of hope, Rob. You're a beacon of hope.
You know what? And the truth is, Nick, when I first got into wealth management, I was in my early 20s and I'm trying to get $1 million from really rich people. So I didn't share that story. Right. I did everything I can to talk about the schools that I've got 4 college degrees, right? I went to grad school. And so I would talk about all those things that I thought that people wanted to hear. And then I realized, okay, that's okay. It's getting me some clients, but that's not really making an impact because those people that I were dealing with were the 1% of the 1%. The rest of everybody, the 99.9%, needed to hear a story and realize that, hey, look, if he did it, I can do it. And look, dude, I had a bad life, but I spent time in India. I spent time out of this country to where, I thought I grew up poor. Like, they don't have running water.
Right.
They don't have electricity.
Yeah.
Again, caste system, they're never going to be able to change their outcome. So I don't feel sorry for myself. And the only reason I talk a little bit about it at the beginning of the book is to tell people, put your excuses down, right? You're going to become a victim of your excuse. Like, people have had a lot worse life than all of us.
And they'll fight for them too.
They'll fight for them, right? Yeah, exactly. And they will stay broke forever with that broke mentality and all the reasons they can't lose weight, or they can't go back and do this, or they can't save money. And if you believe that and you say that over and over again, you will stay there. The corollary of that, if you start believing, if you start telling your kids anything is possible, just find the path and work towards it, it will change. You will be able to do those things. So yeah, it wasn't about like feel sorry for me. It was the opposite. And I really struggled with, do I even want to share this much personal stuff about it? But I wanted people to know, like, hey, I'm just like you. And for a lot of people, you probably even had a better life, but you're sitting there doing nothing. Or like I said, I always say the greatest sin I believe on earth is unreached potential. God gives us that ability to do all these great things. And if you come up here or there, I just feel like, why, right? Like, you've got so much opportunity in this country. Go out there and do it. I don't think anyone's ever on their deathbed going to be saying, oh man, I did too much.
Right.
I accomplished too many things. It's always about the things, oh, I wish I did this, or I wish I did that. And that's, what I'm telling people is, don't settle for some second class version of yourself.
Ooh.
I think that's what most people do out there. It's just not necessary. There's an opportunity to be who you want to be.
Man. Folks, you got to, I'm going to get mine today so that as soon as they start shipping out, I'm getting one for me and one for my son, right? He's got to have, because he'll destroy that thing. I like to keep mine wrinkle free. Folks, the new book is called Close Your Wealth Gap, Financial Lessons to Upgrade Your Life, by author Rob Luna. You can get it on Amazon, robluna.com, Barnes & Noble, all your favorite bookstores for the most part, right?
Everywhere you go.
Everywhere you go. Rob, is there any final thoughts or anything that you'd like to leave everybody with today as we bring this sucker to a close?
Yeah, I just want to say a little bit, just kind of recapping what we've talked about. I think most people today are in a position they don't want to be in, but they gave up. They've settled for where they're at today because people told them that that's where they should be, and that's just BS. I feel like, and again, working right to left is a lot of what I talk about in the book. It's a lot of what I coach about is figure out what you want to be in life. And I'll give you a secret and a roadmap or framework, which I love frameworks that I use for myself and I give to all my clients. It comes down to 4 things. It's focus, clarity, execution, and accountability. And so what I mean by that is focus, figure out where you want to be. Okay. So, I want to live here. I want to eat here. Here's where I want my kids to go. Okay. Figure that out. Once you figure that out, get the clarity. And so a lot of people will tell me, hey, I want to retire here. I want to live here. Okay, how much is that going to cost? I have no idea. Well, the difference between people that are great and people that are average is the people that are great have extreme clarity. If someone asks me, hey, Rob, how much money do you need to retire? I know the exact number. I know the exact amount of income after taxes. And when you have that type of clarity, the next thing that comes in is execution. You could put a roadmap to be able to execute on that. But you might be doing things, making investments. People are investing. Hey, Rob, is this a good investment? I don't know where you're trying to go. You shouldn't be doing that. You should be investing here because that's going to get you there quicker. And then that final part is accountability. Get that in your life. Because once you have the focus, you've got the clarity, and you're out there executing, you need somebody to make sure that you're continually executing. Get a mentor, get somebody in your life to hold you accountable to that. When you put all those 4 things together, I promise you your life will change.
Folks, you're going to want the copy of this book, baby. It's going to be on all the bestseller lists, no doubt. I'm really excited for my copy to get delivered. It comes out next week. And again, you can get it on any of the places that you like to buy your books, robluna.com, Amazon. Check out Rob on Instagram and Twitter at @TheLunaRob. Man, Close Your Wealth Gap, Financial Lessons to Upgrade Your Life. That's the title, right?
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, I look forward. Go out, buy a copy, buy 2. I was gonna give a money back guarantee, but I know your audience is gonna be too many. Look, $30. I promise you, it's gonna be the best investment that you've ever made.
I agree. And they make good little Christmas gifts too with the time of year we're in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. And they fit in a stocking and everything, don't they?
Very compact.
I love it, man.
The Hitstreak is powered by Rack Financial. When it comes to your credit card merchant processing, Rack Financial is efficient, reliable, and trusted. At the end of the day, when it comes to processing your credit card payments, they make it simple, the way it's supposed to be. Check out Rack Financial.
Well, Rob, dude, this was I'm serious, man. This was an honor and a pleasure to have you in today, man. I'm a big fan and was super excited to get you here today.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to share this with your audience. And look, truly, I hope if you go out and buy the book, we're going to have I just want to say this to your audience. Don't make it a shelf help book. Like, use this book, use the calculators. My team's available. If there's a question, you don't understand something, I will put someone on there to make sure that your $30 investment is worth it. I want to see people using this advice. My goal, last thing I'll say, is to change the lives of 1 million people through financial literacy. So I want to get this book into as many hands as possible. If you know somebody, a charity or something where they can't afford it, also reach out to my team. We're setting aside a budget every year to donate these books to different charities of people who can need them and can't afford them.
Wow, that's awesome. That is awesome. I got to give a big shout out to my man, Jeremy Weber, who helped connect us from the greatest brand building company on planet Earth, Brand Builders, and our buddy Brad, who we've mentioned multiple times for putting us together at dinner the other night too, right? So, Rob, man, thanks so much for hanging, brother. I'm serious.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, Nick.
Folks, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of The Hitstreak. I am your man, Nick Hyder. God bless.